The transport ship did not land so much as surrender to gravity. Its engines gave a long, tired whine, like an old animal reluctant to lie down, and the landing struts struck the black glass surface of Umbra's royal platform with a vibration that traveled up through Samuel Torres's boots and into his spine. He stayed seated for a moment after the ramp indicator flashed green, staring at his reflection in the opposite bulkhead. The reflection looked like him, but slightly wrong, stretched by the faint distortions of Umbra's electromagnetic field. Even light behaved nervously here. He stood, adjusted the collar of his uniform, and muttered, "Well, Sam, if this place eats you, at least you won't have to pay rent anymore." The bulkhead did not laugh. Neither did the ship's onboard intelligence, which had remained silent ever since entering Umbra's orbit. That alone had been unsettling. Military ecchi I love to talk. They offered weather reports, tactical suggestions, and occasionally unsolicited life advice. This one had simply stopped speaking, as if it had decided there were no useful words left. The ramp lowered with a slow hydraulic sigh. Beyond it, Umbra waited. Twilight was the first thing he noticed. Not sunset, not night. Twilight, endless and unmoving, like time had paused halfway through exhaling and forgotten how to finish. The sky glowed faintly violet, and the distant sun hung low and dim, a pale wound in the heavens that never closed. Samuel had seen photographs, of course, but photographs lied. They flattened things. They made the alien feel manageable. Umbra was not manageable. The air tasted faintly metallic as he stepped forward, and the temperature dropped immediately, wrapping around him like cold fingers, testing his presence. His breath fogged briefly before fading. Gravity here was slightly lighter, just enough to make his body feel subtly disconnected from itself, as if he were walking inside a memory instead of reality. Two royal guards stood waiting at the base of the ramp. They were tall, pale, and perfectly still, their long ears rising elegantly from silver hair that fell like liquid metal over their shoulders. Their armor was seamless, grown rather than manufactured, its surface dark and smooth as obsidian. They did not move when Samuel approached. They did not blink. He raised a hand in greeting. "Hi," he said. "I'm the new guy. Please don't stab me." They stared at him. He cleared his throat. "That was a joke." One of them finally spoke, her voice calm and precise. "We are aware of humor." Samuel nodded. "That's reassuring. You weren't showing any symptoms." She did not respond. He stepped past them, trying not to feel like he was walking into the mouth of something enormous and patient. The palace rose ahead, its structure impossibly tall, its black crystalline surfaces reflecting the dim light in fractured patterns. It did not look built. It looked grown, like a natural formation that had decided to become architecture. Inside, the air grew warmer, though not comfortably so. The walls pulsed faintly with soft bioluminescence, veins of dim silver light running through them, like a circulatory system. He could hear something. Not sound exactly, but vibration, a low harmonic resonance that lived just below the threshold of hearing. He stopped walking. The floor beneath his boots gave a faint, slow pulse. Samuel frowned. He shifted his weight, and the pulse changed. "Oh," he whispered. The palace was aware of him. He resisted the urge to apologize to it. A servant approached silently from the corridor ahead, her expression neutral. Her long ears tilted slightly forward, a gesture he was still learning to interpret. Curiosity, he thought, or suspicion. On Umbra, those might be the same thing. "You are Samuel Torres," she said. "I am," he replied. "Unless this is a dream, in which case I'm also late for school and forgot my pants." She stared at him. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Another joke." "You are assigned to protect Princess Lila," she continued. "You will remain within proximity at all times." "Understood." She hesitated, studying him carefully. "The palace will observe you." Samuel blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say observe?" "Yes." He glanced at the walls, which pulsed faintly, quietly alive. He nodded slowly. "Well," he said, "I hope it likes what it sees." I moisturized. She turned without replying, gesturing for him to follow. The corridors stretched endlessly, their architecture shifting subtly as he walked, angles bending in ways that made his sense of direction unreliable. Umbra did not believe in straight lines. Umbra preferred curves, Umbra preferred uncertainty. He passed no windows. He saw no sky, only the living walls and the quiet awareness that followed him. Finally, they reached an open chamber. She stopped. "She is there," the servant said. Samuel stepped forward. At the far end of the chamber, seated on the smooth black floor, beside a tall crystalline column, was a small figure, a child. She sat with her knees drawn close, her silver hair falling gently around her shoulders, her long ears rising elegantly from her head. She wore simple dark garments, unadorned and quiet. She was not playing. She was not moving. She was waiting. Samuel approached carefully, his boots silent against the smooth surface. She did not look at him. He stopped a few steps away. "Princess Lila?" he asked gently. She turned. Her eyes met his. They were calm, older than they should have been. She studied him, her gaze steady and unafraid. Samuel offered a small smile. "Hi," he said. "I'm Samuel. I'm here to make sure nothing bad happens to you." She tilted her head slightly. "You walk loudly," she said. Samuel blinked. He had spent half his life learning not to. He considered arguing, then shrugged. "I'll try to disappoint you less," he said. She watched him for a moment longer. Then slowly she stood. She walked toward him without hesitation. He resisted the instinct to step back. She stopped in front of him. She reached out, and she took his hand. Her fingers were warm, warmer than they should have been. Samuel froze, startled by the contact. She held his hand firmly, as if confirming something only she understood. He swallowed. "Well," he said softly, "this is new." She said nothing. She simply held his hand, her small fingers steady and certain. And for the first time since arriving on Umbra, Samuel Torres felt something he had not expected. Not fear, not confusion, recognition, though he had no idea why. Samuel did not pull his hand away. It would have been the logical thing to do. Maintain professional distance, establish boundaries, avoid emotional entanglement with royal alien children on living planets. The handbook had been very clear about at least one of those things, but Princess Lila's fingers remained wrapped around his, warm and steady, and something about the contact made his instincts hesitate. Her grip was not desperate. It was not fearful. It was certain. She looked down at their joined hands as if examining an object she had misplaced long ago and had only now rediscovered. Samuel cleared his throat gently. "You know," he said, "in my culture, this usually means we're either friends or you're about to drag me somewhere against my will." She glanced up at him. "Both," she said calmly. Samuel blinked. He had not expected that answer. "Well," he replied, "I appreciate the honesty." She began walking, still holding his hand, guiding him deeper into the chamber. He allowed himself to be led, his boots making faint contact with the smooth black floor. The palace pulsed softly around them, its dim veins of light shifting with slow, organic rhythm. He couldn't shake the sensation that the structure was paying attention to them specifically, not watching, listening. He leaned slightly toward her as they walked. "Does it always do that?" She did not look at him. "It listens to intentions." Samuel stopped walking. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "Did you just say intentions?" "Yes." He stared at the nearest wall. The wall pulsed once, faintly. He raised a hand and waved awkwardly at it. "Hello. I come in peace. Please don't interpret my thoughts out of context." The wall offered no reassurance. Princess Lila continued walking, unconcerned. He followed, lowering his voice slightly. "Does it ever misunderstand?" She nodded. "What happens when it does?" She thought about that. "It becomes afraid." Samuel considered this very seriously. He was standing inside a structure capable of fear. He decided not to make any sudden movements for the foreseeable future. They entered a long corridor where the air shimmered faintly, distortion fields bending light into soft waves. Embedded along the walls were small floating geometric devices, each emitting faint tones at slightly different frequencies. Samuel recognized the technology immediately. Resonance anchors. They stabilized spatial continuity, preventing dimensional drift. Umbra did not entirely exist in conventional space. He exhaled slowly. Of course, he muttered. Why wouldn't the palace exist partially outside reality? Princess Lila glanced back at him. You are uncomfortable. Samuel gave a small shrug. I've had worse first days. This was technically true. Once during training, he had accidentally activated a combat drone while holding a sandwich. The drone had interpreted the sandwich as a threat. It had not been a pleasant afternoon. She stopped walking suddenly. He nearly bumped into her. She turned, studying his face closely. You are not afraid. Samuel opened his mouth, then paused. He considered lying. He considered professionalism. He considered dignity. I am, he admitted. I'm just pretending not to be. She nodded slightly as if this confirmed something important. That is acceptable. He wasn't sure why, but her approval felt oddly reassuring. They resumed walking. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with suspended crystalline structures, each hovering silently in the air. Within them, faint shapes moved, echoes of recorded moments, preserved in light and quantum memory. Samuel slowed, staring. Are those memories, she said. He stepped closer to one. Inside, he saw figures moving slowly, their forms indistinct but unmistakably real. A tall woman stood at the center, her posture strong, her long ears framed by a crown of black crystal. Queen Ravenna. Beside her stood a man, human. Samuel froze. The man was laughing. The recording contained no sound, but Samuel could see the expression clearly. The ease, the warmth, the familiarity. He looked happy. Princess Lila watched him carefully. He told funny stories, she said quietly. Samuel nodded faintly. He looks like someone who would. She tilted her head. You also tell funny stories. Samuel smiled faintly. I try. It's a survival mechanism. She studied him, her expression thoughtful. Did humor help you survive? He considered that question seriously. Yes, he said. She seemed satisfied with this answer. They stood together in silence for a moment, surrounded by fragments of preserved time. Then suddenly the palace pulsed, not gently, sharply. Samuel felt it through his boots, through his bones. Every resonance anchor in the chamber flickered briefly. He straightened immediately, instincts activating. What was that? Princess Lila did not appear alarmed. It felt you, she said. Samuel stared at her. I'm sorry, he said slowly. It what? She gestured faintly to the walls. It knows you are here now. He rubbed his face with his free hand. Great, he whispered. I've been acknowledged by the sentient architecture. She squeezed his hand gently. You are not unwanted. Samuel lowered his hand. He wasn't sure why, but that mattered more than it should have. He looked down at her. She looked back up at him. And for the first time since arriving on Umbra, Samuel Torres realized something that unsettled him more than the living palace, more than the alien technology, more than the endless twilight sky. He did not feel like a stranger here. He had no idea why. And that frightened him in ways he could not explain. The palace did not have mornings. Samuel discovered this slowly, through the absence of change. There was no sunrise creeping through windows, no gradual warming of light, no comforting illusion that time was moving forward in familiar increments. Umbra remained suspended in its endless twilight, the sky beyond the crystal spires forever dim, forever watching. He had slept, technically. His assigned chamber had sealed itself when he entered, its walls dimming to simulate night, its atmosphere adjusting to human biological preferences. The bed had reshaped itself beneath him, responding to pressure points and muscle tension with unnerving precision. It was the most comfortable sleep he had ever experienced, which somehow made it worse. He did not trust comfort here. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes, and glanced toward the wall. The faint silver veins pulsed gently, steady and quiet. Good morning, he said cautiously. The wall did not reply. He nodded to himself. Just checking. His uniform hung nearby, cleaned and repaired without his assistance. He was fairly certain he had not asked anyone to do that. He dressed quickly, adjusting the collar, then paused. He had the strange sensation of being expected somewhere. He opened the chamber door. The corridor beyond was already awake, its faint harmonic resonance filling the air like the low breathing of some enormous sleeping creature. The floating resonance anchors drifted silently near the ceiling, their soft tones maintaining spatial stability. Without them, Umbra's position in space-time would degrade, its mass slipping sideways into adjacent dimensional layers. The palace existed here, but not entirely here. Samuel had read the briefing. Reading it and standing inside it were two very different experiences. He stepped into the corridor. Princess Lila was waiting. She stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides, her silver hair catching the faint, bioluminescent glow of the walls. She did not appear surprised to see him. She simply observed him with calm certainty. Samuel blinked. "How long have you been standing there?" She tilted her head slightly. "Long enough." He frowned. "That's not a time measurement. That's a philosophical threat." She said nothing. He sighed. "You could have knocked. The door was watching you sleep." Samuel froze. He slowly turned his head and stared back at the chamber door. The door stared back, in the way inanimate objects sometimes did when they were secretly not entirely inanimate. He nodded slowly. "I see." He made a mental note never to drool again. Princess Lila stepped closer and reached for his hand, as she had done before. Her fingers wrapped around his with quiet confidence. He accepted it this time without hesitation. "You do this a lot?" he asked. "Yes." He considered this. "Am I special, or do you grab everyone?" She thought about that. "You are different." Samuel wasn't sure whether that was reassuring or deeply alarming. They walked together through the corridor, her pace steady, her grip warm. He noticed again the subtle way the palace responded to her presence. The harmonic tones shifted slightly, adjusting to her proximity. The living structure recognized her in ways it did not recognize him. Yet it did recognize him. That part lingered in the back of his mind. They reached an open observation platform overlooking the outer expanse of Umbra. The black crystalline surface extended outward like a frozen wave, its edges dissolving into mist where gravity bent unpredictably. Beyond it, the distant horizon shimmered with faint distortion fields. Samuel stepped carefully beside her. The air was colder here. Far below, he could see the faint outlines of Umbra's lower structures, grown rather than built, their surfaces reflecting the dying light of the distant sun. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. She nodded. "It is also dying." He blinked. He looked at her. She said it calmly, without fear, without sadness, simply as fact. He crossed his arms, studying the distant structures. "All stars die," he said. "All worlds too, eventually." She looked up at him. "Do humans accept this easily?" Samuel considered that. "No," he admitted. "We mostly panic and invent complicated technology to avoid thinking about it." She seemed to accept this explanation. They stood in silence for a while. Then she spoke again. "The palace was grown from the queen's nervous system." Samuel turned slowly. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "Did you just say nervous system?" "Yes." He stared at the walls. He stared at the floor. He stared at the distant structures. He nodded once. "That explains a lot," he whispered. She continued. "It feels what she feels." Samuel resisted the urge to apologize to everything around him again. He rubbed his face. "So," he said slowly, "if she's having a bad day, the palace becomes unstable." He exhaled. "Fantastic." She looked at him. "You make sounds when you are afraid." He lowered his hand. "That's called talking," he said. "It's a very advanced human defense mechanism." She considered that. "It does not appear effective?" He smiled faintly. "No," he admitted, "but it makes me feel better." She studied him quietly. Then unexpectedly, she leaned slightly closer. She inhaled. Samuel froze. Her grip on his hand tightened. Her expression changed. Not fear, recognition, something deeper. She looked up at him and spoke softly. "You smell like him." Samuel blinked. He frowned. "Like who?" She did not answer immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on his. And somewhere deep within the palace, the harmonic resonance shifted. Samuel did not immediately respond. He wasn't sure there was a correct response to being compared by scent to someone he had never met on a planet that existed partially outside conventional space-time, while standing inside a palace grown from a queen's nervous system. He settled on honesty. "I use standard military soap," he said carefully, Very affordable. No emotional backstory. Princess Lila did not smile. Her eyes remained fixed on him, searching, certain. The harmonic tone of the palace shifted again, subtle but unmistakable. The resonance anchors overhead flickered faintly, their frequencies adjusting as if correcting for some invisible imbalance. Samuel felt it in his chest. Not fear, pressure, attention. He cleared his throat gently. When you say I smell like him, who exactly are we talking about? She answered without hesitation. My father. Samuel's mind paused, not stopped. Paused. His training kicked in automatically, his posture remaining relaxed even as his thoughts accelerated rapidly beneath the surface. He reviewed his assignment briefing. Diplomatic incident, execution, treason charges, political stabilization, minimal emotional references. Standard historical revision. He had never met the man. He had never even been within 20 light years of Umbra until 3 days ago. He crouched slightly to bring himself closer to her eye level. That's not possible, he said gently. She tilted her head. It is true. Samuel opened his mouth, then stopped. He believed her. That was the problem. He didn't know why, but he believed her. He stood slowly, glancing around the observation platform. The distant structures shimmered beneath the dim twilight sky. The palace pulsed beneath his boots, its awareness pressing faintly against his perception, like a question waiting to be asked. He forced a small smile. Well, he said lightly, I've been compared to worse people. She squeezed his hand slightly. You are afraid now. He considered lying. He didn't. Yes, he admitted. She nodded, accepting this. The palace's harmonic resonance softened slightly, as if acknowledging the honesty. Samuel wasn't sure whether to feel reassured or concerned. They stood together in silence for a while longer. Then footsteps approached. Samuel turned instinctively, his body shifting automatically between the approaching presence and the child beside him. The movement was reflexive, trained into him through years of protective conditioning. The figure that emerged from the corridor beyond was tall, composed, and unmistakable. Queen Ravenna. She moved without hurry, her long black garments flowing like liquid shadow around her form. Her silver hair framed her face, and her long ears rose elegantly, marking her as unmistakably Umbrian. Her expression was calm, but calm in the way of deep water, still and concealing unknown depths. Samuel straightened immediately. He resisted the instinct to salute. He wasn't entirely sure what the correct protocol was when confronted with alien royalty, whose palace could feel emotions through its walls. He settled on respectful stillness. Her eyes settled on Princess Lila first, then on him. He felt the weight of that gaze immediately. It was not hostile. It was not welcoming. It was evaluating. Princess Lila did not release his hand. Queen Ravenna noticed. Her gaze lingered on their joined hands for exactly 1 second longer than comfort allowed. Then she spoke. You are adapting, she said to her daughter. Yes, Princess Lila replied. Her voice remained calm. Queen Ravenna's eyes shifted to Samuel again. You are Samuel Torres. It was not a question. Yes, Your Majesty. Her gaze did not soften. You were assigned 3 days ago. Yes. She studied him carefully, her eyes scanning his face, his posture, his breathing. Samuel did not move. He had faced hostile interrogators before. This was different. This was quieter, more precise. Princess Lila spoke again. He smells like father. The words entered the space between them like a fracture. Samuel felt the palace react immediately, not violently, but unmistakably. The harmonic resonance deepened, the subtle vibration traveling through the floor and into his bones. Queen Ravenna did not move. She did not blink. But something changed behind her eyes. Something old. Something buried. Samuel resisted the overwhelming urge to say something stupid. He failed. I can explain, he said. Both of them looked at him. He paused. He realized he could not explain. He cleared his throat. Actually, he corrected himself, I cannot explain. Princess Lila's grip on his hand tightened slightly. Queen Ravenna stepped closer. Not threatening, not aggressive, but deliberate. She stopped less than a meter from him, close enough that he could see the faint, almost invisible neural filaments beneath her skin. Biological interfaces connecting her directly to the palace itself. She was not merely its ruler, she was part of it. Her voice when she spoke was quiet. "What did she say to you?" Samuel considered lying. He didn't. "She said I smell like her father." Queen Ravenna studied him in silence. The palace held its breath. Samuel shifted slightly, uncomfortable under the weight of that attention. He attempted a small smile. "For what it's worth," he said carefully, "I don't remember betraying any alien civilizations recently." The joke hung in the air. Princess Lila did not laugh. Queen Ravenna did not laugh. Samuel exhaled softly. "Still adjusting the humor," he murmured. Queen Ravenna's eyes remained fixed on him, searching, measuring, not for his words, for something deeper. And somewhere within the living palace, something ancient and patient began to wake. Queen Ravenna did not immediately speak again. Samuel had learned over years of military service that silence could be louder than any weapon. Silence gave people time to observe, to calculate, to dismantle you piece by piece without ever touching you. And right now, Queen Ravenna was dismantling him very carefully. Not with hostility, with precision. He became suddenly aware of his breathing, the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the faint electrical activity of his nervous system. The palace felt it all. He was certain of it now. This structure was not merely architecture. It was an extension of her perception. He resisted the urge to wave awkwardly at the walls again. Princess Lila remained beside him, her hand still holding his as if nothing unusual had happened. As if comparing him to her dead father was as normal as commenting on the weather. Queen Ravenna's gaze shifted briefly to her daughter. "You should not say such things lightly," she said quietly. "I did not say them lightly," Lila replied. Samuel glanced between them, sensing something deeper moving beneath the surface of their exchange. Queen Ravenna turned her eyes back to him. He felt it again, that careful examination, not looking at his face, looking through it. "You have been on Umbra for 3 days," she said. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You have had no prior contact with this world." "No. No contact with my consort." "No," he repeated. The palace pulsed faintly beneath his feet. Queen Ravenna stepped closer. Samuel remained still, though every instinct in his body was now screaming contradictory instructions. Stand firm, retreat, speak, remain silent, apologize for existing. He settled on stillness. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in concentration. Samuel felt something brush against his mind. Not physically, not directly, but unmistakably present. A sensation like fingers tracing the outline of his thoughts without entering them. He swallowed. "Well," he said softly, "this is new." Queen Ravenna's expression did not change. "Your neural patterns," she said, "are familiar." Samuel blinked. "I promise I've never been here before." She did not respond to the humor. Princess Lila tugged his hand gently. "He is confused," she said. Samuel appreciated the diagnosis. "Thank you," he said. "I am." Queen Ravenna turned her attention to her daughter. "You feel it as well?" "Yes." Her voice remained calm. "Certain." Queen Ravenna closed her eyes briefly. The palace reacted immediately. The harmonic resonance deepened, the air growing subtly heavier, as if the structure itself were focusing inward. Samuel felt pressure build faintly behind his eyes, not painful, but undeniable. He resisted the urge to panic, mostly. He raised one hand slightly. "I just want to clarify," he said carefully. "If this is the part where my brain gets accidentally rewritten, I'd like to formally object." Princess Lila looked up at him. "It does not hurt. That's not the reassuring statement you think it is." Queen Ravenna opened her eyes. The pressure eased. The palace relaxed with her. She studied him again, but differently now. Not as a threat, not as a stranger, as a question. Samuel exhaled slowly, only now realizing he had been holding his breath. "You carry an echo," she said. He frowned. "I'm sorry, an echo?" She did not elaborate immediately. Princess Lila did. "Father could recognize souls," she said. "Not bodies, not faces. Souls. Samuel stared at her. He waited for the punchline. There wasn't one. He rubbed the back of his neck. "That sounds like a very useful skill," he said carefully. "It was." Her voice remained quiet. Samuel hesitated. "Was?" Princess Lila looked toward her mother. Queen Ravenna answered. "They executed him." The words did not tremble. They did not crack. They simply existed. Samuel nodded slowly. He already knew this part. Officially. Unofficially, standing here now, the truth felt heavier than any report had conveyed. He searched for something to say. Something respectful. Something useful. He failed. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Queen Ravenna did not react immediately, but the palace did. Its harmonic resonance shifted again. Softer now, quieter. Samuel realized something then. The palace was not reacting to his fear. It was reacting to her pain. Princess Lila squeezed his hand again. "You smell like him," she repeated. Samuel looked down at her. "I don't understand," he admitted. She looked up at him calmly. "I know." Queen Ravenna stepped closer once more. Close enough now that he could see his reflection faintly in her eyes. "You are not him," she said. Samuel nodded quickly. "Yes," he agreed. "That would be a very complicated situation." She did not smile. "But," she continued, "you carry something that should not exist." Samuel blinked. He considered several possible responses. He selected the safest one. "I try to exercise regularly." Princess Lila tilted her head slightly. Queen Ravenna remained silent. Samuel sighed. "Still adjusting the humor," he muttered. But beneath the humor, beneath the confusion, beneath the quiet terror growing in his chest, one truth had begun to settle. He had not come to Umbra by accident, and whatever had begun to wake inside the palace had begun to wake inside him too. Samuel did not sleep. He lay on the adaptive surface of the palace-grown bed, staring upward at the dim silver veins running through the ceiling. They pulsed slowly, rhythmically, like the heartbeat of something vast and patient. Every few seconds the light shifted slightly, responding to fluctuations he could not see or understand. He had the uncomfortable suspicion it was responding to him. He folded his hands over his chest and sighed. "This is fine," he whispered. "This is completely normal. Alien Queen says you contain impossible soul echo. Living Palace agrees. Child confirms with unsettling certainty. Just another Tuesday." The ceiling did not argue. He turned onto his side. The bed adjusted instantly, its internal structure reconfiguring to support his posture. He froze when it did that. "Please don't learn my preferences," he murmured. It already had. He sat up, swinging his feet onto the floor. The surface beneath his boots pulsed once, faintly, like it had been waiting for him to stand. He stared at it. "You and I need boundaries," he told the floor. The floor respected none. He exhaled and walked toward the chamber entrance. The door opened before he reached it. He paused. "I was going to knock," he said. The door did not apologize. The corridor beyond was quiet, its resonance anchors drifting lazily near the ceiling. Their soft tones blended together into a harmonic field that stabilized Umbra's fragile position within space-time. Without those anchors, the entire structure could drift into phase misalignment, slipping into adjacent dimensional strata like a misplaced thought. Samuel had experienced dimensional drift once during training. He had found his left hand existing 3 milliseconds ahead of the rest of his body. It had not been a pleasant experience. He stepped into the corridor. Princess Lila was waiting again. He stopped. "You do realize this is becoming a pattern," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "You wake frequently." Samuel blinked. Yes. The palace feels it." He rubbed his face slowly. "Of course it does." She stepped forward and took his hand again. This time the gesture felt less surprising, more inevitable. They began walking. He wasn't sure where they were going. He wasn't sure she knew either. The palace guided them both. They descended through a series of curved passageways, the walls growing darker, the harmonic resonance deeper. The resonance anchors here were larger, their geometric forms more complex, emitting frequencies that vibrated faintly in his bones. His nervous system reacted instinctively. His pulse adjusted, his breathing synchronized. He stopped walking. Princess Lila stopped with him. He looked at their joined hands, then at the walls, then at the faint glow beneath his skin. He froze. The glow faded quickly, but he had seen it. He raised his free hand slowly. "Did you see that?" he asked. She nodded. "It is stronger now." He swallowed. "That's not comforting." She watched him calmly. "You are not in danger." "That's usually when people are in the most danger," he said quietly. She squeezed his hand. "You are not alone." He wasn't sure why those words affected him so deeply. They continued walking until they reached a vast chamber, unlike any he had seen before. The ceiling stretched high above, disappearing into darkness. At the center stood a massive structure of black crystal, its surface alive with flowing patterns of silver light. Samuel stopped. He felt it immediately. Recognition. Not emotional. Biological. His nervous system responded as if encountering something it had always known. He frowned. "I've never been here before," he whispered. Princess Lila looked up at him. "Yes." He stepped forward slowly. The crystal pulsed. His heartbeat synchronized with it. He stopped breathing. Memories brushed against the edges of his mind. Not his memories. Older ones. Fragments. A hand reaching toward starlight. A voice speaking in a language that did not use words. A feeling of standing beside someone he could not see. He staggered slightly. Princess Lila held his hand tighter. "It remembers you," she said. Samuel shook his head weakly. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." The crystal pulsed again. Closer, stronger. He felt warmth spread through his chest. Not physical warmth. Recognition. Princess Lila inhaled softly. "You smell like him more now?" Samuel laughed weakly. "That's not something I ever expected to hear in my life." The crystal brightened. The palace resonance deepened. Somewhere far above, something shifted. Samuel realized then that Umbra was not merely observing him. It was responding, adapting, accepting. He looked down at Princess Lila. "Do you know what this means?" he asked. She nodded slightly. "Yes." He waited. She spoke softly. "You came back." Samuel stared at her. His mind rejected the words immediately. "I've never been here." She looked up at him calmly. "Yes." The palace pulsed. And for the first time since arriving on Umbra, Samuel Torres felt something more terrifying than fear. Belonging. The crystal did not release him immediately. Samuel stood at its center, his hand still held firmly by Princess Lila, while the structure pulsed with slow, deliberate rhythm. The silver veins inside it flowed like living thought, responding to him, adjusting to him. He could feel it now with absolute clarity. Not with his skin, not with his ears, with something deeper. He inhaled sharply. The air tasted different, familiar. He hated that word. He had spent his entire life being ordinary, comfortably ordinary. He had followed orders, eaten terrible military food, survived training exercises that involved being chased by machines designed specifically to outthink him. His greatest achievement had been not embarrassing himself in front of superior officers, and now he was standing inside a sentient alien palace that apparently remembered him. "This," he said softly, "is not ideal." Princess Lila looked up at him. "You are afraid again." "Yes." She squeezed his hand gently. "You do not need to be." "That has historically not been true," he said. Behind them, footsteps approached. Samuel turned. Queen Ravenna entered the chamber slowly, her presence altering the harmonic resonance immediately. The palace aligned itself with her, its nervous system recognizing its origin. She stopped several steps away, her eyes fixed on him. Not cold, not hostile, certain. Samuel resisted the urge to apologize again. He had developed a habit of apologizing to things that technically outranked him existentially. She spoke quietly. "It has accepted you." Samuel glanced back at the crystal. "I would have preferred a handshake." Her expression remained composed, but he noticed the subtle shift in her posture. Not distance, relief. Princess Lila spoke softly. "He did not leave." Samuel blinked. Queen Ravenna's gaze softened, just slightly. "For years," she said quietly, "I believed his execution erased him completely, that nothing remained." Samuel swallowed. He understood now. Not fully, but enough. Umbra was not merely a planet, it was a biological archive, a living neural lattice grown from Ravenna's own physiology, capable of preserving patterns. Consciousness did not vanish here. It imprinted. It lingered as resonance, as echo, as memory encoded into matter itself. Her consort had not survived physically, but something of him had remained, and somehow, some impossible way, Samuel's neural structure had aligned with that resonance. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to be recognized, enough for the palace to respond. He ran a hand slowly through his hair. "I would just like to clarify," he said carefully. "I am still me." Queen Ravenna nodded. "Yes." Princess Lila nodded too. "Yes." Samuel exhaled. "Good," he whispered, "because I have paperwork back home, and I really don't want to explain this to anyone." Princess Lila tilted her head slightly. "You are staying." He froze. He hadn't considered leaving. That realization unsettled him more than anything else had. Queen Ravenna studied him carefully. "You are not bound here," she said. He nodded. He knew that, but he also knew something else. He looked around the chamber. The living crystal, the harmonic resonance, the quiet awareness that no longer felt foreign. For the first time in his life, he did not feel like an outsider observing something he did not belong to. He felt recognized. Princess Lila squeezed his hand again. "You are not alone anymore." He looked down at her. She was right, not because he was someone else, but because he had been seen, fully, without expectation, without demand. Queen Ravenna stepped closer. She stood beside him now, close enough that he could feel the palace responding to both of them simultaneously. Their neural patterns existed in harmony, not identical, but compatible. She spoke softly. "He loved humanity," she said. Samuel smiled faintly. "That explains his questionable judgment." For the first time, Queen Ravenna almost smiled. Almost. Silence settled around them, but it was no longer heavy. It was peaceful, complete. Samuel looked out across the chamber, across the living structure that had accepted him, across the world that had once been entirely alien and was now something else. Not home, not yet, but no longer foreign. He understood now that identity was not a fixed point. It was a path. And sometimes, without realizing it, you walked farther than you ever intended. Princess Lila leaned gently against his side. He didn't move away. Queen Ravenna stood beside them both, and the palace, alive and listening, pulsed with quiet contentment. Samuel Torres, ordinary human guard, survivor of terrible military food and deeply uncomfortable alien revelations, allowed himself a small, quiet smile. He was still himself, but he was no longer alone. And for the first time since arriving on Umbra, he was no longer afraid.